Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a video where I'm going to go back and revisit something that I filmed earlier in the year, and I wanted to look at the reading goals and kind of the priority books that I set at the start of the year and see if I succeeded in finishing them or achieving those goals. So I'm going to move over to the side so I can put the video in. So let's get started. Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a priority TBR plus my reading goals for 2020. So first up, I'm going to talk about my reading goals for this year, but I also want to add on the end of this video 5 books that I want to prioritize reading this year as well. My first goal is always read 100 books, and whether that happens or not, I'm not too fussed about it. This year so far, I have read 87 books at the time of filming this video, and I aim always for 100, like I said. I don't know if I'm going to reach 100, considering I've got 13 to read, and I'm filming this at the end of November, so I've only got a month left to do that. So maybe I can squeeze in some graphic novels, I'm not sure, but at the moment, I'm anticipating that I'm not going to reach 100. So I'm just aiming for 90, so that means that I only need to finish 3 more things. I think that's a little bit more doable. So I'm pretty happy with that number, to be honest. If I reach 100, I reach 100. If I don't, I don't. It's not something that I beat myself up over or anything. It's just something that I like to achieve and I like to hit. So as far as that goal goes, it's kind of just the standard that I set every year, and if I hit it, then I hit it. So I'm not too fussed about whether I meet that or not. I think that's an easy way to get started into the flow of this video. The next goal is my TBR pile. So my to be read list is quite long, but I've managed to reduce it as much as possible last year. So I started last year with 150 unread books and I ended last year on 56 unread books. And then with a book haul, I added a few to that number. So now I have 63 books on my to be read list, and I want to get that down to 30 this year. So I want to see how I go with that, because I have a bunch of anticipated releases to get to as well that I haven't included on that to be read list, obviously, because I don't own them yet. And I also have a few series that I have the first in. So depending on how I go with those series, I might love them so much that I start and finish an entire series, and that throws off my reading for a few months or the start of the year or what have you. So we'll see how I go. I'm anticipating that a few series are going to really suck me in, so hopefully it doesn't throw off my reading too much. I actually got under 10 unread books left on my to be read pile. So at the time of filming this, I have 6 left. So I am definitely under 30 like I wanted to be, which is awesome. And I'm really proud of my progress, because I used to have so many unread books and it was so terrifying just to look at that amount and go, I don't know if I'm going to get to these in my lifetime. But I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of unhauls, and my reading tastes have shifted naturally. So that helped me cull that list a little bit too. So I'm really happy with where I'm at now. I'm just really proud. I didn't think that I'd get to under 10 books this year, and I'm really happy that I did. Obviously, I'm going to do a book haul in January, and I've accumulated a few books as well, and obviously Christmas is going to hopefully grant me a few new books as well. If no one gifts them to me, then I'll just go out and buy some more. So I will be adding to that number, and I'm planning on doing a video listing the rest of the books that I've got left on my to be read pile, like an updated version of an exposing my unread books list that I did earlier in this year. So I want to revisit that and hold myself accountable and keep track of everything that I've got. That's a video that is sneak peek coming, but I'm pretty proud of conquering that giant number that I used to have. So I'm just really happy. I didn't think I'd get under 30 and I did, so I'm very proud of myself. The next goal is to do some rereads, because if you didn't know, Brandon Sanderson is bringing out a new Stormlight book this year, and Stormlight is one of my favorite series of all time. I absolutely did some rereads this year. I didn't do as many as I wanted to, but I definitely reread the Stormlight books, and I read Rhythm of War, and I do plan on rereading Rhythm of War at some point as well. So I definitely hit those goals, and I'm very proud of that. I reread Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, and I did reviews for all of them because I'd reread them so they were fresh again. So I'm very proud that I was able to actually hit that. I do want to do more rereading in 2021, and I think I might make a separate video about that, because there's a list that I have in my head and I would like to revisit a few different series. So whether I can do that as well as reading a bunch of new and long series, we'll see. But I definitely hit that goal. I'm very happy with that result. Later on in my old video, I said that maybe I wanted to reread The Hunger Games, and maybe I wanted to reread one of my favorite books, The Art of Racing in the Rain. I didn't get to either of them, but I also didn't have any interest in reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the new Hunger Games book, because it followed President Snow. It didn't follow any characters that I was particularly interested in. So I kind of disregarded rereading The Hunger Games, and then I didn't want to reread The Art of Racing in the Rain just because I didn't feel like it. So I'm very much a mood reader who makes a to be read list with enough wiggle room around it to give me space to mood read as well. So I didn't feel like reading The Art of Racing in the Rain, and I picked up a few new series during this year, so that's also why I didn't revisit it. But hopefully next year, I have plans for next year. I'll leave it at that. My next goal is to start and finish some series. So I already have 2 videos on this that I posted at the end of 2019. So one was start a bunch of books this year and another was finish a bunch of books this year, and I had a detailed list of both. So the main one that I want to start this year is Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time, and I know this is a very long and detailed series, so I don't anticipate that I'll finish it this year, but I wanted to make a start on this because so many people talk about how good it is, and it's a fantasy and that's what I love reading. Yes, it is a fantasy and that is what I love reading, and I did love Eye of the World. I gave it a 4 stars, I believe, and I have a review for it as well, and I do very much plan on reading the rest of the series. I do want to do spoiler vlogs for every book in the series, so reading that series is enough work as it is with the books being long, but I've just heaped work on me to make videos as I'm reading them. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get through these books, but I do plan on doing it, and I don't want to leave it too long in between reading the books because I know that they're very detailed with a lot of characters and I don't want to forget detail. So I do plan on getting to, I think, The Great Hunt. Yeah, no, that's the first book. I do have The Great Hunt on my radar somewhere. I do own it, so I believe that's book 2, and I plan on getting to that in early 2021. So I haven't forgotten about that series. I did start it and I had no expectation to continue it in 2020. I just wanted to get the wheels turning on starting the series. So as far as that goal goes, I've definitely managed to start Eye of the World. And then the other one that I want to start as well is The Alchemist by Michael Scott. Yeah, awkward. I unhauled the entire series for The Alchemist. I tried reading the second book twice or 3 times and I just wasn't in the mood for it. I didn't vibe with it. And then I had the whole series sitting there staring at me, and I just realized that I wasn't interested. Eventually, if I decide that I'm interested again, I might pick up the books from my library because I know the library has it. That was really the logic behind that. I didn't really have any ongoing interest in it, and it's a series that's been sitting on my shelf for ages, and I didn't read it when I was young, so I have no nostalgia attached to it either. So I unhauled those, unfortunately, but I'm glad that they're not sitting on my shelf looming over me and making me feel guilty anymore. The next one is to finish a specific book. It is actually on the shelf behind me. It is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihira, I believe is how I say the name. So yes, A Little Life. I did finish that, so tick, big tick to that goal. The next goal is pretty easy and pretty fun for me because I read a lot of this genre anyway, but it is read as much fantasy as possible. And I did this in 2019 because I ended up getting up to date essentially with all of Joe Abercrombie's work, and then I also finished the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks, and those are pretty big conquests, to be honest. I'm really proud that I caught up with both. I did read a lot of fantasy this year, and I believe, I don't know if I finished series. I finished Crownbreaker in January, and that was the last book in the Spellslinger series. I've kept up to date with Joe Abercrombie because he's released 2 books this year that I've read both of. And I've started the Dresden Files, which isn't high fantasy in the sense that it's a separate world with fantasy elements in it. It's in our world, but it's got fantastical stuff and magic. So I've gotten 9 books into the Dresden Files series so far, and from having never read a Dresden book before to reading suddenly halfway through the series in 1 year, I think that's pretty good. And I've been doing reviews for each book so far as well, so I'm pretty happy with that. As far as this old video is concerned, I didn't finish any big outstanding series. I did keep up to date with Joe Abercrombie, which was good, and there weren't any other series that I just barely started, like Lightbringer, that I had to get through and finish. But I did read and reread the Stormlight books, and then I read Rhythm of War as it was coming out. So I think as far as reading a lot of fantasy, looking over the fact that I reread all of the Stormlight books, and the longest that it took me to read one of them was 6 days, I blasted through that series. So I think as far as this part of the goals are concerned, I'm pretty happy. I've started a new series and I got a really good chunk into it. I've kept up to date with Joe Abercrombie, and I've reread a series that I love and kept up to date with that too. So I think I'm pretty happy with this goal as well. I would really like to continue reading fantasy that's on my current TBR and finishing those series. That said, I've only got Malice on this TBR, and even though I do own the entire series, I only want to focus on the first book because I don't know if I'll like it. I ended up not finishing it and DNFing the audiobook. Ah yes, I do mention Malice here, and I did read that book and I finished it, and I talked about it in, I think, a reading vlog and a wrap up. So I'll leave my links down below for more full thoughts upon finishing it because it was a lot more fresh in my head. But I decided again to unhaul that series because it's just not a series for me. It felt very plot driven rather than character driven. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I just recognize that I'm more of a character rich reader, and characters to me really have to inform a story. Whereas I found with Malice, a lot of the story was informed by pre-existing tropes. And while that's interesting because I love fantasy tropes, I didn't love the way that the characters responded to them because it felt inevitable rather than surprising to me. So Malice isn't a bad book, it's just a book that sits outside of my reading taste. So that's why I unhauled the rest of the series. I think it's a quartet and there are other books written after it. And so I'm just disappointed that I didn't get into it because I know that there's a lot more in that world to explore and I just didn't connect to it. So if the other books require a lot of knowledge of the quartet of Malice, I don't think I'll continue the books, but I haven't really researched them either. So maybe I can revisit this author in the future because I believe Malice is his first debut book and he was self-published and then got picked up by a publisher. So I imagine his writing only got better, but I just didn't connect honestly to the story, which is unfortunate. Okay, so those were pretty much my reading goals for the 2020 reading year, but now I have a few priority books. So I've only got 5, so this should be pretty quick. So the first one is Stone Girl by Eleni Hale. I read this and I finished it. I read it at the beginning of 2020 and I think I read it in a vlog as well. So already, first book, tick. Next is a book that's very, very different to Stone Girl and it is The Passage by Justin Cronin. I've read The Passage, I finished that on audiobook and it was a very weird one just because the format of the story was like it was 2 separate books but put together. So we have an 100-year time skip about a third into the book and that's when the apocalyptic stuff starts happening, which is what I was really interested in. But the first section I was like, I could take it or leave it. It was a 3 to 3.5 stars for me. It was setting up some cool horror tropey stuff, but I'm not a huge horror reader. While I love apocalyptic stuff, which naturally I would expect has horror in it, I don't like horror as much just on its own. But later on there was a vampire apocalypse situation and characters surviving in that apocalypse, and that's what I liked and that's what I enjoyed. So I did finish it, but I had to listen to it on audiobook, otherwise I don't think I would have gotten through the beginning. But as far as this video is concerned, I finished it. And then next we have Demon Road by Derek Landy. This is a young adult book and it's basically been pitched to me as a version of Supernatural the TV show, but with a 16-year-old girl as a protagonist and for a younger audience. And that didn't really work out for the book, honestly. I ended up DNFing this after 19 pages. I didn't have aligned expectations properly for this book. It is not Supernatural as a young adult book. So it's not that. It is about a young girl who actually is part demon and she realizes this when she's being attacked by these 2 guys on the street. And the way that this cycle works, you find out all this information at the start of the book, so I haven't read further than this, so this is not spoiler territory whatsoever. This girl finds out that her parents are part of this group that have been going through a cycle of having a child every 16 years because they're essentially immortal, and then consuming that child to consume the child's power. And so she runs away from them and she's assisted in running away and she has to keep running away and then make a deal with Satan in order to stop this constant cycle from happening so that she could save her own life. So I didn't like the voice of the main character. She was not written in a way that was entertaining. I don't know how to describe it other than to say she was whiny, but if you're in that situation where everything you once loved just got turned against you, being whiny makes a lot of sense. I think it's just that I didn't like the tone of the book and so I didn't want to continue reading it. It just felt a bit flat to me and I didn't enjoy it. So that's why I DNF'd it. I'm getting a lot better at DNFing books that I'm not enjoying, and I think it's just a subjective thing in this case rather than something wrong with the book. Usually I think that's honestly the case because books are so subjective. But anyway, I DNF'd it and I never look back. Next we have another kind of dystopian apocalyptic book and it's The Fireman by Joe Hill. And again, don't know too much about this except that it follows a woman who is pregnant and needing to have her child, and it also follows a guy named, I think he's named The Fireman. Oh, this was a DNF for me as well. I got 100 pages, just over 100 pages into it and didn't like it. I have DNF'd 3 Joe Hill books this year and I just don't think he's an author that writes the way I like. So I'm very aware that I'm not gelling with his writing style and I think that's why I DNF'd The Fireman. At least I tried it, but it wasn't for me. And then lastly on my list I have Nyxia by Scott Raington, and I don't know too much about this one except that it's got a really pretty cover and it's an adult sci-fi. Yeah, it's not an adult sci-fi, it's a young adult sci-fi, and it was very much these teenagers go to space and have like a Hunger Games-esque contest in order to be paid out and get a lot of wealth to go to this planet and mine this new substance. And this planet, the aliens there revere young children or teenagers. They seem godly to them, so that's why only teenagers could go. But I just didn't care for, again, the writing and the characterization. It just was underwhelming to me. And for a book with such a pretty cover and such such a cool sounding premise. I wish I loved it, but the track record for the books that I've predicted in here, or spotlighted at least, are just DNFs so far. So I think I was just hopeful about finishing books that were on my reading pile, but my reading tastes have very much shifted. At least I gave them a go, but they're not for me. So I think that was the last one in this video. There you go, that was the end of the video. So I DNF'd a lot, but I achieved a lot of my goals as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will chat to you down below in the comments, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye.